Hello guys and happy new year. We're going to be learning in this tutorial in this new year how to make really cool displacement maps with a really cool tool called JSDisplacement inside Houdini. Stay tuned and watch the full tutorial. Guys, do you want to join a really nice server? We have tons of different channels. We have effects, modeling, loop dev, compositing. We will have resources for every type of discipline. I also have a Patreon page where you can support me. I have every single file, I have polls, I have even some tools, guidance. So if you are interested, you may have a look. Thank you. Hello guys, so welcome to this new tutorial, and here is how it starts. It usually starts with a camera, right? So you want to have like a base layout. So you have to create a camera, and after you actually create, like for example, in this case, a jeep, you can actually do an animation. How did I do this ship? Well, it's actually pretty simple. It's only these couple of nodes. The idea for this is to be super simple because it's not the main focus of the tutorial. So I created a cube, which is consequentially subdivided and then sculpted a little bit. How does the sculpt work? Well, it's super easy. You just have to go to sculpt, press enter, and in this case I could use move and mirror strokes, and that's pretty much it. You start moving and you can create like an interesting shape. This is very low poly, and this is what I did here. I created this kind of I don't know, a bear shape, which I then subdivided again, and I edited something. I just decided to choose these vertex, these points, and move them. Basically, with the letter S, you can go into points, shift click, and press the letter T, and then you can move it. It will automatically create an edit. Then I decided to use the same selections to create a poly bevel, and then I edited some more, basically to create the same concept, and I also added a poly bevel to it. Then I did a UV unwrap. I didn't do anything. That's the beauty of it. You can do whatever you want with this, right? So the UVs might be useful to manually change them. Then I added a new subdivide to make it a little bit more smooth. If you want to have some hard edges, you can. I decided not to. But you can always move into the subdivide and add some creasing, you see, and change how the subdivision works. Then I added a rest position. This is meant for the noise to be baked into a rest position if I'm going to use an animation, which I will. And then I just transform it to make it super large scale. Something like this. I want it to be 50 meters or so. Well, 25 in this case. So then I went outside and I decided to make like a camera motion. This looks complex, but basically what you got to do is to create a new tab, go into Animator, go into Animator Editor, then you can split left and right. Here, you can close this. And you go into the camera, and usually what you want to do is to work, keyframe your main areas of interest. For example, on the translation, so you can select the translation and you can move one by one. So let's say I want to have more Y, you can do it. The same with the rotation, just a basic rotation. This was the original animation, no tilt, you will see why, because if I add some tilt, it will be chaotic here. I could, for example, if I press enter, do something like that, but you will see it is super complex because it adds like keyframes everywhere. Not only, yeah, everywhere, pretty much everywhere. So avoid this. Use the tilt that like with a subproduct. So you have the animation where it wants to go, and then you can add an extra animation, super clean, of what you want to do. Look at this. It's just going to be added on top. If you want to have less pan, you could just go into here and reduce the pan. That's it. Also, since I'm rendering with some focus distance, Look how I am animating the focus distance. This square is being animated, as you can see here. That's it. There's nothing else. I usually like to save this, so I added a $job to USD and save the camera. This is extremely good to add some camera motion blur. So do it. Always try to save your cameras. In fact, always try to save everything. I just decided to only save the camera. Well, you have the ship. Then I decided that the ship should have 1.4 dicing. The dicing is the amount of displacement something has. And I added some animations to this ship. Basically, just it tilts and nothing else. Just a slight tilt. This will work a little bit better with the camera. And it might change a little bit the lights from the. So I decided to add some materials. How do the material look? Let's go into camera CPU because it's going to be faster for us in the recording. Now you will see that the shape is extremely different to what we used to have, right? In fact, it doesn't look like at all to what we had just a moment ago. Now, all this detail that you can see here, we can zoom in. Let's try to move somewhere like here. All of this detail is purely displacement. And it was done with a really cool software called JSDisplacement. JSDisplacement is a tool that allows us to create randomly generated images that you can change as you wish. As you can see, it creates height maps. So you can go into the classic, which is the one I chose, or JSDisplacement 2. And look at this. This is super cool. You just need to play around a little bit. I really just decided to use what it looks best. I think I use one like this, and then I use some of the classic, and you can even have velvet, which is really strange. You can have this, which are some lines. I decided to use some lines probably for the emission maps, and then the dot grid. This is super cool. It's like some windows here and there, which I think I also use this one. And you have a guide, some settings that you can change. So it's a pretty handy tool, and it outputs files up to 8K, I believe. So you can invert this. You can set the normal if you want not to use the height. I just use the height. You can colorize it as you wish if you want it. I mean, you can do this in Houdini. And if you say height, it will just save it as a height map, which is just what you have here, but with resolution. You have presets, for example. You can go into the essentials. You can go essentials 2, minimal, chronology. So you have so many things to do here. Super cool tool. So with this, we created this material. So what does this material do? Well, we have an image. This will just go over the UV map. This is just some images that we created. So let me just for a moment remove this and just go into the base color and show you how this looks. So this is what it's doing. And also let me just remove these cables. This is the image I'm using. This is the first displacement. So now right now it's initializing. But basically what I'm doing is for the displacement is a remap. The image goes from 0 to 1, but I want it to go inwards and outwards. This is the remap I'm doing. So I'm adding over and over again. So I could just remove all of this and you will see how this displacement looks. And this displacement looks just like this, super minimal. And then with a hex tree planner, what I decided to do is to just do the same trick and add another layer on top of it. You will calculate for a bit, but it will add more detail. Look at all this beautiful detail it is adding. And maybe this remap is different. I didn't want to have it so inwards, because in this case, if I go deeper, it's going to probably break in some places, and I didn't want it to break. Yeah, look at all of this. This is all broken. So I just changed the inwards to being a little bit. Okay. And then we have more details. For example, this one, which is just another texture. This is one, this is another one. Now look at this. Now there's way more detail. And this can even work in XPU. So let's go into XPU just for a moment. It is in, and look at how fast this is. See, this is super fast. It takes a little bit just to initialize, but once you have it, it is just there. And well, there is more detail. I mean, basically, I'm just designed to have different sizes. For example, this is different tree planners, different textures. The remap is configured different. And we can have more or less displacement. In this case, I decided to have less displacement. And finally, I had a render with this amount of detail, and I said, hey, it looks nice. But when I go maybe here, I don't know, it feels like it's missing some detail, because the camera was going to go really deep. So I added a new texture with a size of 4 to have this change. Now look how much detail there is right now. And this with a proper camera, with the defocus, with the color, with anything else, it's going to just look fine. So this is the part of the displacement, but let's just turn this off for the moment because it's super heavy to load over here. And let's just go into the color. How did I do this color? So it's super easy. I have a tree planner with a texture. This is just a roughness texture. You will see there is something going on here. Well, I just remapped it, so I can go and control how much roughness or specularity I can have. But then what I also did is to grab this image, which is the seamless, and ramped it to contrast it. As you can see, I can decide what parts are metallic, like what shapes are metallic and what shapes are not, which I then consequently added one on top of each other. This looks something like this, for example. This is how it looks, the metallic and roughness parts. This is how it looks, the noise, and this is how it looks, both of them added one on top of each other. But then I also clamped it so it doesn't go over one. That's for the roughness and metal. As for the color, well, it's super easy. Basically, it's just a mixture of two things. It's a mixture of this texture over here. If I turn it on, you will see this is the texture I'm using, and a mixture of this texture. If you mix both of them, it will look something like that. Just do this. It's either one or the other. There we go. It was bugged. So you can decide what texture you have, and I decided to have this one. Just one more second. There we go. So with this black and white information, what I did was to just colorize it. Okay, you can colorize it with a linear ramp. So I'm doing it constant. And well, there's nothing else to it. That's the whole trick. As for the mission, what I did was to grab some of these places, and just with a simple ramp over here, I decided to make just some parts real shiny. Everything else is 0, and that's the mission, which I decided to use. I'm just playing with the textures, nothing else. So that's the color, that's the specular roughness, and also the metalness. So all of these things combined with the displacement, which I think the displacement is the most important part, gives out the spaceship, which looks something like this. So look at the amount of detail it's being added. This is bugged. Of course, you could control it with some mask or whatever, but from the camera, you wouldn't even notice. So that's the whole material. Then I was using this just as a way to visualize it with shadows, maybe with an area light. You can visualize it from the camera. And look how nice it looks, right? And I saved the ship here, just because I wanted to have it for comp later. As for the floor, well, the floor is just a simple displacement. There's nothing else than just rocks. It's just some rocks with a triplanar on roughness, normal, and displacement. All of them have the same settings. I just connected for the specular roughness to a normal map for the normal, and I decided to use the same trick with a remap going negative. This will add some rocks, and that's a displacement of 14 because this scale was very big. Both of these things combined gives me this. And I'm going to just reduce the displacement just to make it faster. You can reduce the dicing quality and it will output a very low resolution mesh. I added, decided to add some lights. And these lights were looked with a karma fog, which from camera looks something like this, but with a light linker, and basically just selecting all the lights and deciding to add the scene on itself, but only the rim light, which is this one, is going to be added to the ship. Also, look at how organized this is. Remember, guys, always try to have a scene and choose to have a background, maybe this object, and this is the background, and this is the object, and the cameras. For example, this one will go just to the cameras, and the materials can go to the materials, and the lights can go into the scene lights also. So be organized. That's all I'm saying. Now, it might look very awful right now. Let's go into the first frame. And it's very dark. But this is because we don't have any bounce lights. So if you go into the camera render settings, and they just change for CPU, you will see it looks much, much better right now. I'm on CPU. That's why it's slow. This was rendering XPU and it's much better. And let's go to XPU, since we are already there. And you'll see this is much faster. Basically, I just went to XPU, have all the beauty separated by the LP tag. Basically, this means that we can divide it by all of the lights one by one, so we can see what's going on. And rendering, I enable depth of field. You will see later on why. And this karma, these are the settings. It's just a box surrounding the whole spaceship. As for sampling, I decided to have more sampling quality. And as for limits, more diffuse limits, but also more volume limits, which is the most biggest change here. Now, how are the lights created? Well, all the lights, you can see it here. It's just, for example, a point light that we can all see. If we move them, it will explode everything. Going into nuke, this is super simple. First of all, I created a constant with the resolution I wanted for the B. I have this render, which I separated in passes just for the sake of it. You can decide to add any type of additions here and there. All of this merged by plus, it's equals to the same. There's no difference. Which I then denoised it. You could use whatever denoiser you want. I recommend Neat Video. And I merge it with the background. That's it. It's just a standard way to work. And then I added some particles that actually move in place. This is super cool. You will see if I go and press play. These particles are like 3D. So how is this done? So first of all, I created a square format and I created a radial. Then I also created a noise and I copied all of these alphas to the forward U and B. Then I copied it back again. I'm not saying this is the correct way to do it, guys. And I pasted from the first channel U to the forward U and the forward V to the backward V. Yeah, I should have done this properly before. I realized over here it was the way to go. Actually, I could have only used one copy here. I don't know why I did it like this. So bear in mind, this can be improved. I'm not a comper. And then I distorted it. This noise basically changes how this noise looks. This is like one of the particles, and I frame hold it just in case. I don't know because I don't know how to use it, but I just frame hold it. Then I added a cube, and the cube is roughly where the ship is. That's I used to have a read geometry over here, and I localize the ship, and I just put a box around it. So if we go back before, we can go here and do the ship USD, and with shift and negative we can make the gizmo smaller, and we just plug this into the scene. Oh, it is already there. Why it is already there? Maybe it's because I'm it's because I'm double clicking this. Yeah. But you could also add it to the scene itself. It looks like you don't need to. Yeah. So I use this cube as a reference. Basically, I just placed the cube where I needed to, and I added some particles, which are animated here on frame 1991 from 10 to just 0. So we have all of this. Then a little turbulence. So they actually move. You can see they move a little bit. Super cute. I didn't change anything else. For real, it's just changed the turbulence. And the emitter, I decided to use a size range of 1 with a size of 1. Mask lifetime of 1000, so they don't disappear. And this is the strength I used. I didn't change anything. And then I added a reformat to change the format of the scene. And this is how it looks with the camera. Now, this is a cool trick where this already has depth data, but I decided to go here and grab information from my tech pass. Oh, this is interesting. What happened here? Well, we can ignore this. I don't know why that changes, but that's interesting. But then what I did is to shuffle the depth extra to the depth set, and then I reformat it to HD. And with an expression, I changed everything that's who's set. Let me show you the set. Say beforehand, we didn't have any data here, and over here we have the information. This would create an error if we were to work, because this is farther than this. So with an expression, I decided, look at the mouse over here. This is very far and this is very close. So everything which is less than this value is going to be equal to this number. Else is going to be equals to set. There are some errors here and there. I mean, it's not that problematic. With another expression, I just decided to normalize it. So I did 1 divided by set. So you will see it's just normalized. I mean, there's nothing, to be honest, close to the camera. That's why we don't see those values. But this works because it normalized the information, and the same way this works. And I did a dip from image, since I already have depth here. I just created a dip from image, and then I did a holdout to hold out all of the things that are behind the ship. As you can see, I'm using the dip layer to make a holdout. This is very cool. And I did a little bit color correction here, just change a little bit of the colors and merge everything one top of each other. As you can see, this is key to ensure a proper parallax. Then I just copied an alpha, which is basically something like that. It looks something like this, blurred. That's the alpha. I decided to have like some more blur over here. Then you shuffle it everything into. Okay, so I didn't do anything because I did here when I change all the alpha to set layer, and with a simple defocus, I'm controlling this over here. See, it looks very nice, super cool. And then with a color correction, I changed the colors. I transformed it a little bit, just on one channel, as you can see, to create a really extreme chromatic aberration. This is too much. And then I did a lens distortion and I cropped it so it doesn't have more data than it needs. And I graded it and I added some grains. And that's how it looks. So that's all there is, guys. Also, I saved it. Since I'm working with ACES, I'm using the output sRGB. And this is the color space ACES, where I am basically in color, working with the OSHA. Now, all of these lights will contribute to a different aspect of the image. As you can see, I can move this light over here, or for example, this is just, I think it's a point light, which I can move to change how the whole scene looks. Super fast to iterate. Or I can have this one, which is like the background, if I'm not mistaken. I can take it away, or I can place it, or I can even move it over here to make it more, I know, beauty. On this area light, well, this area light is elsewhere, but it's basically a directional light. I can turn it off. It wouldn't change much in this case. Then I added two beam lights. This one, we can just turn all of this off and we can move it around. As you can see, these lights are like mirrored. So if I change this, they are going to be mirrored. How did I do this? Well, basically, you will see if you go into the view and show for selected, they are connected. Because these transforms are basically over here, just inverted in the X and Y and Z rotations. This means that they will do the opposite. So when it goes up, it will go up and down or whatever. But the whole rotations, if I change the first one, sorry, and the whole rotations are like mirrored. So we can go forwards and backwards, up and down, but the X position is going to be mirrored. That's what I'm doing here. And you'd see you have a parent constraint. Why? Because I animated this ship. So if I go into the Vulkan viewer and I just remove the material so I can see it, the ship moves, but also the lights move with the ship. This is super simple. Just grab a fetch to your transform, select the transform, and parent all the lights which are called beam. These are called beam over here. So all the lights that are called beam, parent with the second input and target the ship from that fetch node over here. And use relative offset. That way you can just adjust them in place instead of a rest position. So that's how you do it. And there is a rim light. It is just a backlight, which is linked as shown before. You will see I have this karma render with all of these settings. It's just for the resolution, the path trace, the limits, the sampling. I showed this before. But you see I'm not using any type of utility because I decided to do it later on a secondary pass where I pruned all of the lights and the volume, and just left the ship and the ground. This means that when I render, let's see, I render a CPU, I will only be getting this, nothing else. But you will have the depth, you will have over here, we can have the normals, we can have the position, everything needed for the compositing, if I were to use something like that, which I did. So that's how this scene is done. If you like the tutorial, please leave a like, hop into the comments, and any question you have, I'm going to be there for you. See ya.